ever notice that the version of yourself you present at work isn't quite the same as the one you bring to a family dinner or the one you showcase on social media? Well, trust me, you're definitely not alone in that. Think about it for a second. How much of your life is actually spent performing for an audience? As the writer Brendan Matthews points out, sometimes that audience exists entirely in your head. You might find yourself adjusting your posture or changing your tone for strangers who aren't even looking at you. Or maybe you worry about living up to expectations that, frankly, no one actually set. It really begs the question, who are you when absolutely no one is watching? So here's our roadmap for peeling back the layers of impression management today. First, the masks we wear. Second, life is a stage. Third, chameleons and code switching. Fourth, digital avatars and blogs. Fifth, the psychological cost. And finally, number 6, finding your authentic self. All right, let's jump right into part 1, the masks we wear. We're going to start with the famous psychologist Carl Jung. He came up with this concept called the persona archetype. Basically, it's a protective layer. It's the interface we build between our own messy, complicated inner world and the very rigid, structured demands of the outside world. Now, Jung didn't see this mask as a bad thing at all. He understood it as functionally necessary to navigate a world that simply cannot handle our full psychological reality all at once. It's like a buffer. And we literally use this protective layer every single day. It's exactly why you might confidently use corporate buzzwords like synergy and bandwidth in a morning meeting, when internally you're just wondering what's for lunch. You curate these aspirational photos online to project your best life. You bite your tongue and suppress frustration to seem easygoing to a partner. These are all personas. The real trouble only starts when we forget that the persona is just a construction, and we start believing that the successful executive or the always happy friend is our only reality. Moving right along to section 2, life is a stage. This brings us to Erving Goffman's dramaturgical theory. Writing way back in 1959, Goffman looked at human interaction through the lens of a theater production. He argued that we are all basically actors, carefully managing impressions to win over our audiences. What's absolutely wild here is how this early research on physical interaction completely shaped our modern theories of online identity. Goffman figured out the core mechanics of social media decades before the internet was even a thing. He famously divided our lives into front stage and backstage behavior. Front stage is that carefully curated performance you put on for the audience. Backstage, that's the unguarded reality. Think of a restaurant server acting incredibly formal and polite out in the dining room, but the second they kick open those kitchen doors, they let out a massive exasperated sigh and drop the act. That's the shift. Which leads us perfectly into section 3, chameleons and code switching. So how easily do you slip into these different roles? That depends heavily on a trait called self-monitoring, a concept introduced by Mark Snyder in the 1970s. People generally fall into 2 camps here. High self-monitors are total social chameleons. They read the room and seamlessly adapt their behavior to fit the vibe. Low self-monitors, on the flip side, maintain consistent attitudes no matter where they are. If you're a high self-monitor, you might tweak your opinions depending on who you're talking to. But a low self-monitor? They stay exactly the same, drawing on a very enduring self-image. But look, adapting to your environment isn't always just some casual, easygoing choice. For a lot of people, adjusting behavior becomes what linguists and psychologists call code switching. And this isn't just tweaking your tone. Particularly for individuals from marginalized backgrounds, it is an exhausting, all-or-nothing performance required to navigate predominantly white cultures or corporate spaces, often to proactively avoid negative stereotypes. But the concept also applies broadly to how we manage our professional versus personal images, literally changing our vocabulary, our posture, even our interests the second we step into the office. It's an incredibly intense form of impression management that carries a very heavy burden. All right, let's take this online with section 4, digital avatars and blogs. The internet has basically taken Goffman's theories and strapped them to a rocket. Research by Bullingham and Vasconcelos highlights a really stark divide in how we manage our online personas. On professional, named blogs, people are incredibly careful to minimize their flaws. They edit themselves heavily. Picture that middle manager posting super sanitized leadership quotes on LinkedIn. But on anonymous blogs, we see the online disinhibition effect. That exact same manager, hidden behind a fake username on a forum, might type out raw, uninhibited emotion, complaining about their boss without any fear of their backstage thoughts ruining their front stage reputation. And we see this exact same phenomenon in virtual environments like Second Life. You'd think that in a space where people have the ultimate freedom to be literally anything, they'd get creative, right? But avatar customization actually tends to reflect a desire to fit into local community rules rather than real-life traits. Users constantly edit their identities to project idealized traits. In fact, one researcher pointed out it was genuinely difficult to find mature skins or even realistic shoe sizes in the game. Apparently, in the metaverse, everyone has to have perfectly petite feet. It really forces users to conform to this hyper-idealized virtual beauty standard. Social media platforms make all of this even trickier through a phenomenon known as context collapse. In real life, your front stages are nicely separated, right? You talk to your boss way differently than you talk to your mom. But online, those separate audiences collapse into a single feed. When your college roommate, your grandmother, and your professional contacts are all seeing the exact same post, it forces a lowest common denominator performance. You end up creating this super safe, broad identity that's carefully designed to offend absolutely no one. Let's look at the fallout in Section 5, the psychological cost. What actually happens to our minds when the gap between the performed self and the actual self gets too wide? Well, we hit a breaking point. Now, adaptive performance is totally healthy. It's flexible, context-specific, and most importantly, it's reversible. You can drop the act when you get home. But harmful performance, that feels mandatory. And this leads to identity fragmentation, where you completely lose track of who you genuinely are outside of the roles you play. And that is a fast track to chronic emotional exhaustion and burnout. To really understand why this burnout happens, we have to look at Leon Festinger's theory of cognitive dissonance. This is the profound mental discomfort that kicks in when your public actions constantly contradict your internal values. If you're out there continually posting things you don't actually believe, or you're forced to code switch in a workplace that doesn't accept the real you, your brain experiences severe cognitive strain. You are literally fighting yourself. Let's wrap things up with Section 6, finding your authentic self. Fortunately, psychology offers a really practical tutorial for professionals trying to navigate multiple digital identities without losing their authenticity. Step 1. Simply notice when you're adjusting your behavior just to get approval rather than aligning with your actual values. Step 2. Choose trusted relationships where you can practice dropping the mask and just being vulnerable. Step 3. Set clear boundaries around performance expectations. You absolutely do not have to be on everywhere. And Step 4. Gradually increase your authentic self-disclosure. Remember, building a consistent personal brand across platforms doesn't mean being fake. It just means selectively highlighting genuine parts of who you already are. As we close out this explainer, I want to leave you with a final thought to chew on. Take a hard look at your own digital footprint and your daily interactions. Is your persona an actual reflection of your true self, or is it just a mirror for the audience you fear? Are your masks serving you, or are you serving them? Thank you so much for joining me to explore the wild world of impression management. Keep observing, keep questioning, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.